Hello all, welcome to Smart India Hackathon 2019, Designing Digital Solution Training Program. I am Abhijit Gole. I am working as a technical trainer along with Persistent University. I have around 15 years of experience in various technologies like C++, data structure, VC++, almost all .NET technologies, and in last year it's all about mean stack. In today's session, I'll be talking to you on something called as a React Native, which is nothing but one of the JavaScript framework introduced to the world by Facebook in the year 2015, and that to create native mobile apps. So interested? Let's begin. So guys, this is about now React Native. So if you have a look at this, we are going to talk about something, what exactly is a React Native. So if you have a look at this slide, which I'll be just using here for going through, the more focus is on the doing the things. So we'll be talking about in this particular session about like what exactly the React Native is all about. Why do we need to use it? What it is used for? When you talk from mobile application development, what is native app and hybrid app? Then we'll be talking about something called as a React and something as a React Native. So what could be the exact difference and what are the benefits of going for any one of that or both of them? Is React Native app really a native app, or is it some kind of hybrid app only? Then we would be seeing like how exactly the React Native works. So that's how we are trying to understand the working of React Native, and a variety of other concepts and different demos that we will be exploring here. Now I just kept only few slides here. The reason is we have a this is a kind of some 3 hours of session where we would be seeing lots of stuff. So this is a kind of overview that we are going to have about the React Native. So that's why I didn't specify each and everything in that stuff. It's just going to be a kind of concept and demos I have specified. Whereas in actual implementation, we would be seeing all those concepts as well as the respective demos related with it. So what exactly the React Native is? So when you say React Native, if you have a look at this, it's nothing but it's a framework that allows you to build native mobile application using JavaScript. That is something very important. It's a framework that allows you to build native mobile application using JavaScript. Otherwise, when I talk about any application as a native application, means what? That is the actual application which is getting installed on the respective device. So if you talk from native application perspective, means mobile. So we are going to have a two dominating operating systems. One is Apple's iOS, other is Google's Android. So in one, if you want to create any kind of application, you have to go for something like a Swift or Objective-C, that is for Apple. In case of Android, you have to go for do the coding with the help of Java. So I need to have a developer who is master in any of these, and based on that they could go and choose which one to develop for. But that is not the case when I talk from React Native perspective. So React Native is a framework that allows you to build native mobile apps using JavaScript. So normally you would need a program your mobile app using Java. That is definitely for Android. Swift or Objective-C, that is for iOS. React Native removes that requirement, leading you to fully functional apps on both the platforms in much less time and using just one coding language, and that is nothing but the JavaScript we are talking about. So when you say Android and iOS, they have very different code bases. So when you talk from startups and business perspective, those are really gonna struggle to hire or afford such kind of engineers, those who can take care of both. So probably not both, even at least one thing, still it's gonna be little unaffordable for those guys. Whereas if anybody who is comfortable with the JavaScript, who is having an experience of web development, that is with HTML, CSS and JavaScript, that guy also can easily create now native mobile application. How? That's with the React Native. So but with React Native, just one developer can write across different mobile operating systems. So it's going to be a single code base that would work for any kind of mobile operating system where you would be having actual native application by a same code. So that's what is the React Native is all about. Now why should I go for it? Because if you see, like when I want to develop a native application, I could actually go for the Objective-C, I could actually go for Android, or I could go for some kind of other framework. They allow me to have some kind of hybrid application. Now I've been discussing here about the hybrid application. I have been saying something about the native application. If anybody is totally new to this, that person probably not able to understand what exactly the difference between hybrid and native. So not to worry, I'll be definitely going to talk about that. What exactly is a hybrid app? What exactly is a native app? But prior to that, what kind of benefits React Native gonna give me? So just have a little discussion on that front, and then we will talk about the hybrid and native app. So why I should go for React Native? So the first reason I should go for it is cross-platform compatibility. So I would say like majority of the React Native APIs are cross-platform. What do you mean by that? Which means that your one component will work on both iOS as well as on Android. You can develop complete full-blown application that look, run and feel native without writing a single line code of platform specific. Means if I want to have my native application to be available on iOS, I don't have to go and write any single line of code using Objective-C. Same is very true in case of Android. I don't have to write any single line code by using Java. So I, being a developer of such kind of stuff, don't need to know about Objective-C, don't need to know about Java. Even I don't have any great knowledge about mobile application development and particular environment related with that, still I could easily go and do that stuff, because the kind of code I would be writing is into JavaScript, and which gives me the feature of cross-platform compatibility. The second reason is shorter development cycles. What do you mean by this? So React Native makes the process of developing mobile apps much faster, because you don't have to have a different code bases for different OS. There is a huge developer community supporting available on net for the React, and definitely as being it is an open source project, it has a lot of components available for use. So there are components available which you can simply go and reuse. So that's why it's going to be a kind of shorter development cycles available. The third reason is about live updates and code push. Means once the application is created, once you are developing your native application, you're going to have one very big advantage, that is something called as a live updates. So developers can push the updates to the user's phone without having to go through the app store update cycle. So definitely this has been made possible due to the extensive use of JavaScript. See, developing native mobile applications with React Native has one very big advantage about that is nothing but a live updates. Developers can push the updates to the user's phones directly without having to go through the App Store update cycle. And how it is made possible? Due to the extensive use of JavaScript. Longer approval times is more specific to the iOS, but updating all your users' apps on the fly ensures that you won't have to deal with older version problems. Then there is something about the code push. So Microsoft's live update service, Code Push SDK, integrates with your React Native app, allowing you to push updates to your app. So which are the updates you are trying to do, you can simply update them in your app. The drawback is that only the JavaScript file and the assets can be updated. So on the fly, what you can update is only the JavaScript files and the respective assets. Any update which is touching the native OS side will have to go through the regular App Store or Play Store update process. So even though it's going to be live update, but that is only from JavaScript file and respective assets perspective, not from the native OS side perspective, right? The fourth reason why I should go for it. So React Native builds near native apps. So you could get an idea when you say something about React Native, the name why Facebook has given the name as a React Native. So React Native is a mobile framework for development of native application introduced to the world in the year 2015 by Facebook. Why they are given the name as native? Because whatever kind of application you would be creating, those are not gonna be hybrid, but those applications gonna be native application. So they are gonna have exact same look and feel as that of the native application that you develop either using iOS, that is Objective-C on iOS, or by using Java on Android. So is it really gonna be a native? If that is the case, then why anybody would go for iOS, that is of Objective-C, and Java for Android? So that is not really the case. 100% is React Native really a native stuff? So not really. So React Native builds near native apps. Means what? So mobile apps created using React Native perform as well as any native app can perform whatever task. While JavaScript is not as fast as native language, going for a Swift or Objective-C or Java, React along with the JavaScript can run even the most complex of apps smoothly. Even though it's not as fast as the native language, but still React along with the JavaScript can run even the most complex apps smoothly. So the JavaScript part of the code runs on its own thread, so your app's UI animation won't lag, no matter how heavy the compilation gonna be. So React Native apps are quite indistinguishable from native apps. Same UI building blocks that are used for native apps, just put together using React and JavaScript. So those are really indistinguishable from the actual native apps. It also gives the developers an option to write code in native languages when required. So it's not like it is always going to be only in a JavaScript. You could go and have some kind of specific code which might need to deal with the native stuff, gonna be possible. So it's easy to switch to Swift or Java when fine-tuning a certain component, right? That's why React Native builds near native apps. Cross-platform compatibility, shorter development cycles, live updates and code push. React Native builds near native apps. As well, there's a better development environment available. So as I said, like, you don't have to go through again any Play Store or App Store for that matter. You can directly update the things over the fly. But that is just very true related with the JS and the related assets. So hot reloading refreshes the UI instantly. Rebuild, deploy with the ease. These kind of benefits you get if you go for this particular environment. So you're going to have a better development environment over there. React Native uses the Flexbox layout engine for both the platforms. This means you need not to learn just one layout engine to develop on both iOS and Android. So just by knowing a Flexbox layout, you would be able to create a great native app that could run on both the things. That means on iOS as well as on Android. So we have been talking about hybrid app, we have been talking about native app. What is the difference between them? So it's my native app versus hybrid app. Nothing great, it's pretty simple. So you could have a look at this native app built using the SDK for a certain software framework or hardware platform, or even specific to the OS. So Android app built using JDK on Java platform. iOS app built using iOS SDK by using Swift and Objective-C. Right? Whereas when you talk about hybrid applications or hybrid app, like as these are the mobile applications, so I preferably call it as an app instead of application. Hybrid app built using web technologies like HTML, CSS and JavaScript. What's something different in case of hybrid app? Because if you talk from React Native perspective, yes, we are going to create one native app, and that too by using HTML, CSS and JS. But still it's not going to be an hybrid app, it's going to be a native app. So what's something different in that? Hybrid app runs on a web view. So there is some kind of view available. That's a kind of wrapper, a kind of browser kind of stuff. Within that, this particular application is running. So this is not actually getting deployed or not getting installed on that mobile device, but it would be running within the web view. But that's not the case when you talk from a native app perspective. So it runs directly on the platform. So before we go and get started into the world of hybrid versus native mobile application, there are few things we should consider, or there are few things we should think about. So at least one aspect of mobile that you should always be aware about the mobile phones, like those are very personal devices. So you have to decide which application you want to create. It's going to be a native app or it's going to be a hybrid app. So to get into that, there is one aspect of mobile that you should always be aware, and that's nothing but mobile phones are very personal devices. So if you are building apps for both iOS and Android users without the same perspective, it's not going to work. That's for sure. As it stands, most mobile devices use one of these two operating systems on the world. So you have to create an application that would go for either for Android or for iOS. So native app is a smartphone application developed specifically for mobile OS, like say think about Swift for iOS and Java for Android. Since the app is developed within the mature ecosystem, following the technical users and user guideline experience provided by the OS itself. For example, you can say about the swipe gesture. So now of course they offer the fastest and the most reliable and most responsive experience to the user. So app will have the look and feel, consistency based on the kind of OS you are dealing with. So with the most other native apps which are built in into the same devices. So native apps have the significant advantage of being able to easily accessible and utilize the built-in capabilities of user's device. For example, you can go and access, let's say, GPS or camera or address book or many more other things. Well, on the other hand, if we talk about the hybrid applications are at core website package wrapped into a native wrapper, something like framework that you could use as a PhoneGap or Cordova or Ionic. They look and they're going to have their look and feel like the native app, but ultimately outside the basic frame of the application, they are powered by the company's website itself. For example, if you talk about like some kind of Facebook app, so company's website gonna have this Facebook as a kind of hybrid app. So sites like Facebook, Netflix, Twitter, it does not really make sense to launch a native app platform or even to recompile their app for just the one feature. It's going to take a lot of time, because just for one feature, if you're going to redevelop that application as a native application, it's definitely going to take a lot of time and it's too heavy. So it really makes sense for them to just get started with the hybrid application. Now hybrid app can also use a native functionality like camera, GPS, but that too via some third-party plugins, and a lot of code need to be enclosed with that, while on the other hand the native applications are pretty easy to utilize those functionalities. So you could decide, like if your company already dominant in the web like Facebook, Twitter, Netflix, and your content flows like a huge amount, then having a native app would be a tough decision, while hybrid app will suit you more. And for using native resources with great performance, better to have a native one. So coming back to here, the PPT, I could say for native app need to have a multiple code based on the platform, whereas for hybrid app it's a single code based work for all, because that's going to run in a particular web view. So the examples of the different frameworks by which you can develop the hybrid app: Cordova, Ionic, Xamarin, etc. Native are built using specific tools like Android Studio with Java for Android OS, Swift with the Objective-C with on iOS, and so on, right? So React Native is a mobile application framework which is going to have a single code base. So you're going to create a single application that would be going to work on different mobile OS. Even though that is being developed using JavaScript, still it's not going to be a hybrid. It's going to be a native app. Okay. So as I already said, when you talk about a React Native, it's the mobile application framework given to the world by Facebook. But why the name is given as React Native? Because definitely you would be using it for creation of a native apps. So what exactly that React is? So Facebook faced some issues while during their development, and they have come up with one React or React.js as a JavaScript library. So React is nothing but it's a JavaScript library for building user interfaces on web client side, and even you can use that library on the server side. By considering the benefits of it, they have come up with as a kind of so-called successor of it, that is nothing but a React Native. By considering from the functionality, kind of features, those things are provided, I'm saying a so-called successor. Otherwise, definitely it is React is a library which is being used within the web, whereas React Native is used as a framework to develop native application on the mobile devices. So React Native is a mobile framework that compiles to native app components, allowing you to build native mobile apps for different platforms like iOS, Android, etc. using JavaScript and React, and both of them are open source by Facebook, right? So even though we are not going to see anything about the React in this particular session, but when I want to explain you about the React Native, in order to understand that, I need to talk a little bit about the React. So basically, React Native is a framework which was built and announced by Facebook in the year 2015, applying the React architecture to native iOS and Android applications. So it's a framework applying the React architecture. So it has to do a lot with React. So if you want to understand what is React Native, you should understand little bit, at least little bit about the React. So actually speaking, Facebook was facing a lot of problems about redesigning their apps and everything, and basically the problem was handling a lot of users to just roll out new features. So Facebook really needed something more robust, more fast, that can handle a lot of traffic as well as can be designed really quickly. And the team at the Facebook got started by designing a new completely fresh project, which is React. Now the good part about the React is its virtual DOM. So there is something great about the React, that is it makes use of a virtual DOM. Though I'm not going to go into much detail about it, but when you say something about a virtual DOM, it's a kind of JavaScript object. So basically, whenever some kind of change gonna occur by the end user on your HTML page, the whole physical DOM, the DOM which is in a browser, is not getting re-rendered. Instead, the changes are getting happen in the virtual DOM, in that particular JavaScript object which is there in a memory. And only the changes which differs with the previous copy of virtual DOM and this copy of virtual DOM, only those are getting re-rendered on the actual physical DOM. So because of this, things are really faster. Because of this, things are really faster. So by all this virtual DOM, what you need to understand is it's really fast. Although it's a library, but it's a kind of, you can say it's a kind of lightweight component that can be injected anywhere. You can use React with PHP, with MySQL, with MongoDB, or maybe with any other kind of databases as well. So using React is really going to be awesome, and everybody is liking the community support. So now comes the point that this is React and that is used for designing web applications. So what it has to do with React Native? So as the way I said, like it's a kind of so-called successor. React Native is a so-called successor of React. So now all things that you learn in React, like components, props, state, or a few kind of other things, if you already have a knowledge about the React, you can simply make use of them as it is in a React Native. So whichever thing that you already know about the React, you could use it as it is in React Native. So it's not again like you have to have some new learning curve to go for a React Native if you already know about the React. If you don't know, that's a different story. Then you would be just going to learn the React Native itself first. That's not a problem, right? So if you have done some kind of programming in a React for doing a web application development, now doing a native mobile application development is nowhere difficult for you, because you are aware about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, that too by writing the code using React way, right? So if you are already aware about the React, going for React Native is really not at all a big deal. As well, both are open source by the Facebook. So we discussed, like by going for this, we can create a native application using JavaScript. As well as in previous slide, we discussed about like we have some frameworks like a Cordova, PhoneGap, Ionic. They allows us to create a web app. They allow us to create a hybrid application by using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. But then what's something special about React? The best part is it's not, which of the application that you will be creating is not going to be hybrid application. It is going to be a native application, right? But when you say the application which is created using React Native, is it really a native application? So I would say it like this way: React Native is not really 100% native. Then why we are calling it as a native app? React Native is not going to be 100% native. So with React Native, you can build a real mobile app that is really indistinguishable from app built using Objective-C or Java. Because React Native uses the same fundamental UI building blocks as regular iOS as well as on Android apps. So for many, this is a great advantage. Given that normally you would need to program your mobile app using Java or Objective-C, instead of that, you simply go and do it with the help of JavaScript, only by using a one coding language. That's something special. But is it really going to be native in that case? So suppose you take an example about, let's say, native Gmail app. So the Gmail app includes a worker that checks your inbox. Your Gmail account is synced with the whole mobile system, not just with that particular app. Gmail also knows that if you are on mobile data, not on a Wi-Fi, so based on that, it should sync less often. If you are on a mobile data, not on a Wi-Fi, in that case, it should sync less often than when you are on a Wi-Fi. But now when with React Native, you are not integrated so closely with the system, at least not out of the box. So your account will be stored in the app and not really in the system. So it's also harder to take into account like Wi-Fi versus it's a mobile data. So for some apps, this will not be a problem. For few others, it might be game-changing scenario. So that's the reason there is slight difference going to be definitely there when you are going to create a actual native application or actual native app by using a respective platform specific code or by using React Native. Then how do we say it is a native? So it is native in that it does not use web view like a hybrid app. So there is nothing like it is not running in some kind of web view which is a kind of wrapper for the browser and all. It uses a native controls, so things like scrolling look and feel native because they are actually not native. So exactly same look and feel as that of actual native app. And it's going to have a separate thread for UI so that it runs fast. Okay. Now we have to understand one slide that is about the working of React Native, and then you would be going for these concepts and demos. So it is just the one slide that is remaining, that's why I just talk about it. So this is about the working of React Native. That slide is morely talking about some kind of diagram. So if you see, this is my React component, which is for my React application. I'm not saying about a React Native, I'm talking about a React application. That is being created using React.js. That is being taken care by React.js, getting converted, and then being rendered in the actual browser DOM. When you talk about a React Native, again you would be going to create a same React component, but React Native comes in a picture, which will take care of passing it either to the iOS or to the Android or to the Windows phone based on the kind of connector available. So the basic idea of writing mobile apps in JavaScript feels a little odd because definitely JavaScript was not meant for that. Then how is it possible to use React in a mobile environment? So in order to understand the technical underpinnings of such kind of React Native stuff, first we will need to recall one of the React's feature, that is a virtual DOM. So just now I discussed about little bit about that. In React, the virtual DOM act as a layer between developer's description of how things out to look, that is on actual browser DOM, and the work done to actually render your application onto the page. So to render interactive user interfaces in a browser, developer must edit the browser's DOM or DOM object model. So that is document object model. So let's come to the React now. Instead of rendering it to the browser's DOM, React Native invokes Objective-C API to render to the iOS components. It's my React Native which gonna invokes the iOS Objective-C API to render it to the iOS component. Same way, Java APIs to render it to the Android component. So this sets React Native apart from other cross-platform app development options like PhoneGap, Cordova, Ionic, which often end up rendering in a web-based views. That is not really the case when I talk about React Native. So how it is possible to invoke the respective Objective-C API or Java APIs? So this is possible because of the connector. So connector provides React with an interface into the host platform's native UI elements. Connector provides React with an interface into the host platform's native UI elements. React components return markup from their render function, which describes how they should look. With React for the web, this translates directly to the browser's DOM. For React Native, this markup is translated to suit the host platform. So we are going to deal with something as a view template or view element that become an Android specific text view. So React Native currently supports iOS and Android because of the abstraction layer provided by the virtual DOM. So tomorrow React Native could target other platforms too. Just someone has to write the appropriate connector for it. Right? So in case of React, it makes use of a virtual DOM in between, and then it's going to render it on the actual DOM. Whereas in case of React Native, the React Native comes in the picture. It just go and invoke Objective-C API to render to iOS component, Java API to render to Android component. And that's how React Native is apart from other cross-platform app development options, which often end up rendering your web-based views, right? Now, as I said, like this is a kind of overview session, so I won't be discussing much more stuff on the PPTs, but better we go for the demos. So we would be seeing, like, first of all, how we can create our simple hello world component. So that's why I'm talking about a React Native components. How it is possible to make use of a styles for React Native components. See, React is a web-based library for creation of a reusable UI component, but React Native is a framework for mobile native app. So the things have to be little different than the web. Then there is a concept called the props. There's a concept called as state, which is there from the React itself. So we'll be talking about that, what kind of benefits we get, what kind of the kind of architecture which is being followed, architecture pattern which is being followed, and based on that, how this props and state gonna work. We'll be talking about a flex box. We'll be talking about handling a text input, going for a buttons and handling its events. Now it's gonna be a mobile device, so we're talking about a touchable stuff, scroll view, list view. Then even though it's gonna be my mobile app, it might need some kind of data to be fetched from the server. So I want to go for an asynchronous call. So fetching the data from the server, a kind of networking stuff, and using some of the already available component libraries. So these are the things that we will be talking about. So when you want to go for a React Native, you want to get started with it, you have two approaches. First of all, this is unavoidable that you need to be really good in HTML, CSS and JavaScript, and having a little bit of knowledge about the flexbox is additional stuff. So your HTML, CSS and JavaScript skills are essentially you cannot skip, and it's not a vanilla JavaScript skill you need to require to do a programming here, but little bit more than that. What am I trying to say here is you have to make use of something called as a ES 2015 or ES6. So you need to know little bit about ES 2015 or ES6. So the way you would be writing a JavaScript code, that is by using ECMAScript 2015 specification, where you would be able to create a class by using actual keyword class. You would be able to import and export the classes and objects and other things. So you have to understand the ES6 way of import and export, right? So in this particular session, we are not gonna do it explicitly, but probably that's, you could say, it's a kind of prerequisite to do the React Native programming, right? So once you are comfortable with HTML, CSS and JavaScript part, then comes the second approach. But then that's gonna be completely your own choice. Like when you want to get started, you can start with the React or you can directly go for the React Native. I would recommend like you better preferably get started with the React first, because all the skills that you learn in React, again the components, props, states, everything is going to be helpful in React Native as well. But again, it's not a compulsion. So a lot of people directly jump to the React Native as well and learn all the concepts just right there. So it's completely okay, as well as like you go and develop your application as per the expectations, right? But as if you are already aware about the things in a React, it is really helpful for you to do the great development. So there are different popular React Native apps you're gonna have. So we're gonna have something like a Facebook, Instagram, Airpay, BNB, Skype, Tesla, Walmart, Discord. Variety of apps, they are actually using React Native. Okay. So before we come to the summary part, it's better we just go and have our app development. So how do you start the React app development? So basically, now we are trying to do the things from the development perspective, not really at the production level. Again, we can create an application and we can deploy it either on a iOS or we can deploy it there on a Android as well. So for that, what you can do is you can actually make use of your own device to deploy the applications, or you can go for an emulator as well. So what I've done for this is I just have downloaded the Android Studio. So I just have launched the Android Studio. This is my Android Studio. There is one React Native application is already being created. I just have opened that application here in that Android Studio. Here, if you have a look at this, I get something as SDK manager. Prior to that, it's a AVD manager. So AVD manager stands for Android Virtual Device Manager. So I'm gonna start a new AVD there. So definitely I have to configure this. So I have configured Pixel XL API 27. That's Android 8.1 Google API AVD. So I just click on this and this would start the emulator. This would start the emulator. So basically, when you go for this, and you are launching this particular application and you're going for a emulator thing, your emulator is running. Now your intention is now to deploy this particular React application there. So I just go to the Google here on the browser and I'll search for React Native. So if you see here, the first link gonna take me to the official site of it, facebook.github.io. If I just go for this particular style, I'll click on a get started. So getting started gonna have a quick start or building projects with native code. So I can follow these steps where I need to go for installing dependencies. So I need to go for a Node, Python 2, JDK. I have to go for something like a React Native CLI. CLI stands for command line interface. So by this, it is possible for me to create a React application. Now, as I'm saying, like I'm not going to use my own device. I would be using this particular emulator. So for that, definitely I need to go for a Android Studio. So a specific version of that, the Android SDK, performance Intel HAXM. I need to enable the virtualization of my machine. Android virtual device respective has to be available. So this process I did. I just launched my Android Studio. I just launched my AVD manager and then I am running my emulator. So this is my Pixel mobile. Then to create a new application, I'm going for a React Native. So React-Native would be available when you install the React Native CLI. So React Native init one project. So creating a new application where necessary things are available specific to iOS and specific to the Java. So you can see this is the application which is getting created with these kind of files. You can see the folder for iOS, folder for Android. We are more concerned about going for an JavaScript way of writing the code, because we are trying to create this particular application as a mobile native application by using React. Now this application is available. I need to run this application. So if you have a look at this, there is an index.js file having an app registry. There is an index.js file having a app registry. So what is this app registry? So it is something like you are trying to register the app. So app registry, excuse me, is the JavaScript entry point to running all React native apps. So app root component should register themselves with the app registry register component. So app registry.register component, I am going for an app. This is arrow function syntax of ES 2015 or of ES 6. So this app I am importing from the file app.js. So you can have a look at this, importing React, importing component, going for some platform style sheet text view. These are the components which are specifically for the React native. So you can see here is my component. It's a reusable component. It needs to be rendered. In case of React, it needs to be rendered on the browser. In case of mobile native app, it needs to be rendered there on the native application itself. So this is my reusable component. This needs to be rendered, so at least I should have a render method to it. Then what should I render it? So I should have one element. Within that I can have multiple other elements. So there is a view. So view is the most fundamental component of building UI. You can see view is a container that supports layout with the flexbox, style, some touch handling, accessibility controls. So this particular view maps directly to the native view equivalent on whatever platform React Native is running on. So whether that is a UI view, div, Android.view, anything of that sort, right? So view is designed to be nested inside other views and can have 0 to many children of any type. Whereas I want to show some kind of text like kind of hello world. So for that I am going for another component that is nothing but a text. Let's not bother about the style at this moment. I'll talk about it. So text is a React component for displaying text. Text component gonna support you nesting, styling, touch handling, and number of things, right? So this is my component. What I'm trying to display, there is a welcome to React Native. So this is the component which is rendering this view with this text. What is being taken care in the index.js? App registry dot register component, right? That's a app registry dot register component. What I said about that is it's a JS entry point to running all React Native apps. So app root component should register themselves with the app registry register component function. So if I want to do something, I should deal with these JS files because it's going to be a React programming. It's going to be a React JS programming. So there is some style created, container welcome instructions, and those are being used here. So regarding the styles, I'll talk a little later. Right now we just go and run the application. So to run this application, first of all, what I need to do, I need to start my React Native. Right, I need to start my React Native. So for that, what I would be doing is, I'll be going to the respective folder. This is my node command prompt. I'm in a respective folder. I'm running two node command prompts because there is something wrong with the default port, that is 80881. So I'll be going for another port. So first of all, run the command to set the new port for the development server. So React Native start at the new port, that is 8088. Then I will be going to establish the communication between emulator and the dev server. So for that, On another one, I'll go for ADB -S emulator -554 reverse TCP colon 8080 TCP colon 8080. So basically my emulator has to be running and then it is trying to connect to this. ADB is nothing but it's my Android debug bridge. Right now I'm trying to show it for the Android itself. It's my Android debug bridge. After this, I should start my application. So React Native start. Where I need to run it? So React Native run on Android. Right now it's a Windows machine. That's why I'm just trying to have Android Studio. That's why this particular demo I'll be showing it on Android. So let's see what's going to happen there. I go to the emulator and I press R twice. So that's going to load my application. It will take some time, and once initially it is being done, it will basically go and install that on the device. So you can see here app debug.apk. So installing that APK. So this is a kind of native application only. So what is going to be your native application? It is trying to show you the app component where you have a view, and that internally contains welcome to React Native. I just make some kind of changes. The change going to be, let's say, Smart India Hackathon 2019. So again, I don't have to recompile it. I just have to refresh this. So on the fly, the change is going to happen there. And you would be able to see that here. So welcome to React Native Smart India Hackathon 2019. Right? So regarding all this, the steps are definitely given there in this particular stuff itself. Once the application is available, you just have to go and follow this stuff. Once the application is available, you have to keep on just simply saying RR. You keep on playing RR there, it would refresh the application. So whichever changes you have done in the JavaScript, on the fly those are getting changed. On the fly those are getting changed. So let's go and create any one of the new component of your own. So we just have used that app component where we are basically just trying to show some kind of text. That's great. That is being taken care. I'll go for now, let's say, one component where I would be showing some kind of image. Instead of just going for a pretty simple one, I'll just go and have some image as a additional stuff to it. So I could do that as a part of my app.js, but preferably I'll go and follow the modular approach. So I'll go for, let's say, another component. I'll say it as bananas. So I want to use this component in a app.js. So I need to go and export that. So export default class. Suppose my component name is bananas. Extends the React component. So for this, I'll go and import React and the component from the React. See, we have created this particular application by using React Native CLI. So that's gonna take care of many things. That's gonna take care of installation of all these things available for me. So from that, I'm able to get, this is my node module React. From that, I'm able to get these classes. I would like to use the image, so that image would be available from React-Native, because on the browser you're going to have an img component. It's not the image. So each and every React component should have at least a render method. So I'll say let pick is equal to some URI, unique resource identifier. I'll just get some image from Wikipedia stuff. So what this would render? This would render one image. Source is going to be, so binding this with respective JavaScript expression, you could say. So the value of pick, that is internally going to have a URI. is being assigned to the source of that image. Style I can apply like this. Width, whatever is the width you want to give it. Height, whatever is the height you want to give it. And let's complete my image component. So here is my bananas component. I am exporting that one as a default. So here I just first of all go and import it. So I'll do one thing. The way I'm having this text element, same way I'll go and have that bananas. So when I go for this, it just go and import that for me. So you can see here, import bananas from this. You can see this React and bananas only I am importing directly with their names, whereas rest all with their names obviously, but within the curly braces. So whatever is being exported with the default, that you can import it as with directly with the name, not within the curly braces. Not within the curly braces, right? So whichever are being exported without default, that you would be importing in within the curly braces. So from a file at a time you can export only one thing as a default. So this is the bananas. Let's have a look at the changes here. So I'm still having that text, as well as I'm going for this another component called as a bananas. So this is my text, whereas this is my bananas component where it is showing the image of the bananas. So basically this is my app component, which is my root component that is being registered with the app registry. Within that I'm going to have another child component that is a banana. That child component is nothing but a banana. So you would have a look at this bananas. How I'm trying to apply the style is, within the curly braces I'm going to have another curly brace where I'm going to have actual properties. So let's do one thing, let's go and explore the styles, because if you would recall in the app.js I'm having multiple styles available there. So what's something special about this and how do you take care of it? So let me go for another component. I'll name it as, let's say, lots of styles.js. So for the time being I just copy this bananas one as it is, go to this. The render would be different for that, and definitely the name. So lots of styles is the name I'm giving for it. What would this render do? So this would, let's say, going to return me a view where, let's say, I'll have a text. I'll say red. So the style I would be applying to this as what? Color colon red. Exporting it as a default one. So which of the color that I would be showing there is going to be in a red color. So let my app to render that. So lots of styles this way. I press double R. So cannot find a variable view, because in my lots of style there is nowhere I imported the view which I am using it there, which I am actually using it there, as well as text is also not going to be there. So I'll go for view, I'll go for text. There is no need to have an image. I just copy pasted the older one, that's why it was like that. Refresh it. So you can see that particular red text is in a red color. The style is being applied like that. Instead of this, with React Native, you can create the styles in a different way. With React Native, you don't use a special language or syntax for defining styles. You just style your application using JavaScript itself. So all of the core components accept a property or prop named style. So the style names and values usually match how CSS works on the web, except names are written using camel casing. Means if you go for in a CSS, if you want to set the background color, you will be going for a background hyphen color. Here you will be going for a background capital COLOR. So the style prop can be a plain JavaScript object. That's the simplest and what we usually use for example code. So you can also pass an array of styles. That last style in the array has a precedence. So you can use this to the inheritance styles. So as component grows in a complexity, it is often cleaner to use a stylesheet.create to define several styles in one place. So what I would do is I would do it like this: const styles equal to stylesheet.create. So let's say I'll go for one class style sheet as big blue. It's gonna have, let's say, color as blue, font hyphen weight, let's say bold, font hyphen size is gonna be 30. I'll have one more, green, color is red. Obviously color is green, why it would be red, right? So my styles gonna have big loop and green. These are the two styles would be available there. So big blue and green, I mean to say. So that was the style which was applied red. I'll go for the new one, where instead of this, now I'll say styles dot, let's say I'll go for green. So there again I don't have to go and specify the curly braces because it is already being taken care here. So if I just go for it, you can see red in red color. Again the same problem, I'm using a style sheet but I haven't imported that. Now it will be okay. So green is in green color, or I can go and have it for another one, styles dot big blue. So red, green, just big blue. You might do something like this as well. You go for setting an array. So I'll say styles dot big blue comma styles dot red. So it's going to be, what it sets is a big blue and then it would set it as red. So I'll set it that way, then red. So what do you think it would be in a which color, big blue or red? So it would be in a red color. Oh no, but it's gonna be a big blue. What do you think? What's the problem? So when you go for an array of styles, the last style in the array has precedence. So you can use this to inherit the styles. What if I would do the things in this way? So basically what is wrong with that is there is nothing like a red. I should go for a green. So that was not having anything there. That's why only the big blue is being set. But now if you have a look at this, in this array I am specifying both the styles. Those are present there. That is, one is a big blue, other is a green. So whichever is the set last is gonna get the precedence. So now if you have a look at the output, this big blue and then green is in green color. If I just try to do it in the reverse way, like I'll say it in this way, green then big blue. So I'll say styles dot big blue at the end and styles dot green at the beginning. You can see here that's in a big blue color, whereas this one is in a green color, right? So basically, whenever you go for specifying the array of styles, the last style in the array has precedence. So you can use this to inherit these styles. So intentionally I just made that mistake. Even you go for something like that, if that style is not available, whichever is available, that is being set. But when you go for having it in a specified, those are already available, out of that the last one is being set. Okay, out of that the last one is being set. Now we have seen about going for having a pretty simple component, exporting that from a respective file, importing it in another file. Now let's go and have a component where we would be dealing with something called as a props. So from React perspective, each and every component can go and have a props. Props is a kind of, what do you say, the kind of abbreviation for properties. But it's preferable from React or React Native perspective to call it as a props. Now those props are read only, those are immutable. So you can't directly go and modify the props. But you can modify the props by passing the data from the parent. So props are generally getting filled by getting the data from its parent. So what kind of properties I can create? What kind of props I can deal with? So for that, what I would do is I'll just go and have a separate component. So let's say I'll go for another component called as a greeting. So if you have a look at my greeting component, it's just gonna be a kind of export default class greeting extends component. So those who are not at all aware about the ES6, they might have get an idea. Whatever code I am writing is in a JS file, this is a JavaScript code. But still I am going for a class that is being inherited from component. So this is my ES 2015 or ES6 way of writing a React component or a JavaScript class. If I would have been writing this by using ES5 way, in that case I would have gone for a function. The inheritance I would have taken care by using a prototype chaining or classical inheritance, or better way is going for a pseudo classical inheritance. So that's why this is a kind of prerequisite that you should know. This is the component, it should have a render method, and then that should return something which would be rendering. So I'll go for one view. I'll apply some kind of style. Now I have not created anything there, so I'll just go and specify the style here itself. So I say align items going to be center, comma, something like justify content also at the center. Okay. Within this I'll be having one text. Let's say hello. For this I'll apply the style as, let's say I want to set some font size. So font size equal to 20. Write a code with a proper indentation. Let's use this. So the way we have this, I'll go for greeting. For the timing, I'll just comment these two. So I'm rendering this text and I'm rendering this greeting. So if you notice here, what I'm going to have is can't find variable component. Okay, that's, yeah, again the problem is when I written this, I haven't basically imported the required stuff. So just copy it from some other place, going for React component, going for view and text. These are the things which are being used. So you would notice here, welcome to React Native Smart India Hackathon 2019, and there is a component which is actually going to have just a view with the text. Now I would like to use a property here. So basically properties are immutable. You can pass the value to those properties from the parent. And if I want to access those properties, I'll go for a props collection. So this dot props in the expression gonna give me that collection. Let's say I want to deal with one property called as a name. So wherever I'm rendering this component, that means within the parent render method, there it's me being a developer, it's my responsibility to pass the value to this name. So if I refresh it again, there is no name, something is being passed there. So that's why I could still see there it as hello only. I just do one thing, I'll render one more greeting component possible. So twice it's gonna show me hello. The only thing I would do is here I'll say suppose greeting name, and to that name I would pass some kind of value. So what name I'm talking about here? The name is nothing but going to be the props that I'm going to have. So I'll say, let's say OV. So you would notice here, first hello is going to be just hello. Second one is hello OV. Because now when I'm rendering this greeting for the second time, I'm passing the name props. I'm passing some value to the name props. Same way I might want, when I go for this greeting, it should have some default value for that props. So I'll go for a default props, the property that we are dealing with name. So I'll say suppose let's say Sachin Tendulkar. So now if I just go and render this, if I'm rendering the greeting without any name, it will take the default value. So that's why you could see here it's a hello Sachin Tendulkar. In second case it's a hello OV, because that is what is the name that I'm passing here. That is what is the props that I'm passing there, right? So always remember, in case of React or in case of React Native, props are immutable. Those are there to get the data from the parent component, and you cannot directly modify them. So if I'm rendering this greeting as a part of render of my app component is a parent component. So during my app component, I'm passing the props over there. That's how it is being received here. So props collection gonna have a respective property, right? Now the way we have a props, we also have another concept called as a state. See, you can go and have n number of such a reusable components. You can deal with the props where you're going to get some kind of data from the parent side or from some other place or from there itself in that component itself. But the problem is you can't modify them. But somewhere, sometime you might need to modify that. So you have to have something which allows you to do the modification. So in that case, you can go for something called as a state. You can go for something called as state. So we're going to have a concept like a props. We're going to have a concept like a state. Props are immutable. State going to make your component stateful component. By default, each and every React component or each and every React Native component are stateless. You're going to have to maintain a state for it. So generally you go and have your parent component as a stateful component, and your child component is going to be a presenter components. So stateful component is a container component, is going to be a stateful component where you're going to maintaining the state, and then that state you would be passing further to the child components. That state you would be passing further to the child components. So to understand the state, I'll go for another example. Let's say I'll go for a count component. So I'm just going to have one component that is a kind of counter. That component will keep on increment the counter. So I just copy this, go for it. So there is no chance of me forgetting something. What I would have here. So first of all, I want to make this component is going to be a counter. First of all, I want to make this component as a stateful component. So I need to go and have a state over there. So I'll just say state. I can have multiple states. Right now I'm interested in going for one state, that is a counter. So count is 0. That is my state. See, now as I said, when you go and create a reusable component, that is a React component or React Native component, that component should have at least one function, that is a render function. See, this function is something called as a lifecycle hook or lifecycle method. Means for every component, execution or for every component's creation and destruction, during these phases, there are certain methods are getting executed. We call them as a life cycle hooks. Where these kind of life cycle hooks are really useful. See, it is something like this. You are having a one mobile app, which is a kind of YouTube app where you are doing some kind of video streaming. So one of the user has installed that app on their machine and running that application and running that particular app on that device. So some video is getting played. Now that person got some kind of message, probably WhatsApp message. So that guy gonna switch between your app to that WhatsApp app. What would happen with the video which was playing on that, which was getting streamed on that? Because your application is not active at this moment. So if it keep on streaming that, it's gonna use a huge bandwidth of your network as well as the source of the battery of that mobile. Instead of that, if you go and handle such kind of different life cycle hooks for your component, and there you take care of it, like if your component is not really getting rendered, it is going to be in a inactive stage, you can release the resources or you can wait for some time and then release it. Definitely people would prefer to use your application. Otherwise, if your application gonna suck the memory of that particular mobile device, that is a battery usage or the bandwidth usage, then definitely no one would prefer to go for it. So in such a scenario, it is very important to understand such kind of life cycle hooks. As and when the time comes, I'll go and talk about them. So render, anyway we have been using it. Right now I'll be going for one more, that is something called as component did mount. These life cycle hooks are going to be same for React as well as React Native. Right? So we are talking about here one of the life cycle hook, that is a component did mount. So by the name, are you able to get something that's a component did mount? So when you say it's a component did mount, this is a particular method which is executed after the first render only gonna happen. So this is the method where you can make some kind of asynchronous call. You can update the states. This is the method where you can use it for the integration with some other frameworks, or you're executing some kind of functions with the delay executions like set timeout or set interval. So that's the reason I'm going to handle this. So what I want is, I want to modify the state in this. Now whenever you go for a stateful component, when you're going to have a state in it, you just can't say something like this directly. This dot state dot count is equal to this dot state dot count plus 1. So React Native framework does not understand this way the state is getting modified. You always modify the state by using set state method, and that's how it's gonna encounter there is a state is being modified. So count is equal to what? This dot state dot count plus 1. Now my intention is it should modify the state, but every after some interval. So I'll go for a set interval, going for an arrow function definition, and then within this calling this particular this dot set state. And I want this should get executed every after 1 second. That means every after 1000 milliseconds, right? So here is the state which I'm keep on modifying every after 1 second, incrementing it by 1. Now I want to get the count, so I'll just go for a variable, let's say const count, this dot state. This is the concept called as a destructuring. Again, this is coming from ES 2015. Const, I am interested in getting, let's say, color and size, this dot props. So somehow I'll pass these values. These values in terms of props, and then here I'm going to destructure them. So return, what should I return? Let's say I'll return the text. What is that text? Expression which would resolve the value of count. Style, What is that? Color comma font hyphen size colon size, right? So if you're seeing ES 2015 or ES6 for the first time, it is advisable you should go and have a prerequisite ready. You should try out few things from the ES6 perspective. So definitely the counter is available, the counter component is available. I need to do what? Render it. But while rendering this, okay, count is getting incremented here, but while rendering this I should take care of these two properties. So I'll go to the app, I comment this one as well, greetings. I'll keep that text and I'll go for counter. So it's being imported, import counter from this. What I'll pass is a color. So color is going to be what? Let's say sky blue. Size is going to be 16. So sorry. Color is this, size is this. This is how I would be passing the props. The way for the greeting I was passing name, here I'm passing color and the size. So if you have a look at the emulator, what I would see there is, I can see there is 1, 2, and it's in a small color. I would render the multiple counters first. I would go for a sky blue, I'll go for blue, I'll go for navy, I'll go for, let's say, dark blue. And I just also increase the sizes, 32, something like 80, something like 140. So if you notice this, right? So every after 1 second, I'm modifying the state of my counter component, and then that is being getting rendered because there is a change in the state. So state you can modify, but not the props. State you can modify, but not the props there. Okay. Now if you see here, we have seen few of the concepts over there. Those concepts, like we have seen about creation of a pretty simple reusable component. So we have used that as an app component. We have discussed about having a view and having a text. So that view is the most basic building block. To show the text, I'll be going for a text element. Then we have used a simple component where I'm trying to show some kind of images. So it's an image which is coming from the React Native, because this is not a kind of IMG of my HTML5 element, because this is not a web application I'm trying to create. Then after this, I'm going for a greeting, rather I'm going for a styles. So there is a specific way of creation of a style here. It is just not like you go and have a CSS file and then deal with it. So with React Native, you don't use any special language or syntax for defining the styles. You just style your application using JavaScript itself. So all of the core components accept a prop named style. So that's why here every component is going to have a prop name as a style. Here I'm using color, size, name. Same way they are using style. So the style names and values usually match how CSS works on the web, except names are written using camel case. So instead of background hyphen color, I would be going for background capital COLOR. Then after this styles, if you would notice, what we have seen here is about going for another component, that is a greeting, where I am dealing with the props. There is a concept called as a props. That means you are able to have some kind of data there. Most of the time that data is coming from the parent component. So it's coming from here, it's coming from here, it's coming from here, and then that is being used here. When you deal with the props, props are immutable. Props are not getting modified directly. But same way, if you want to store some kind of information specific to the component, there is another way by which you can go for it. That is something called as a count. No, count is a data that I want to store, but by using a concept called as a state. So in this state, I would be storing the count as a data, and I can modify that state by using a method called as a set state. So you just don't go and directly modify the state by saying this dot state dot count is equal to something. That way React Native framework won't understand that change. So you always make sure whenever you're going to have a state for a component, it is always being modified using set state method. It is always being modified using set state method. Okay, this is my ES 2015 or ES6 syntax of destructuring. So from state I'm getting the counter, from props I'm getting color and size, where I'm passing here color and size as the props. State is internal, that is being modified. So generally I would be having something like this. Parent class gonna have a state, that is my stateful component. Child class gonna have props. So the child class props I'll be setting with the parent class component, and then that data is getting passed from parent to child. So if you want to make any kind of change, you do the change in the container component, that is in the parent class component, in the state, then that is automatically being reflected to the props. Because React or React Native works on one very important principle, that is unidirectional data flow. So there is no support for something called a two-way binding. Like from web perspective, if you say Angular is a kind of client-side JavaScript framework that is having a support for two-way binding, but because of that there is some kind of performance issue. That is not the case with the React as a JavaScript library. React does not support anything like a two-way binding, and the same is very true with the React Native. So it is not possible to do the two-way binding. Like you can make the changes from source to target, but you can't make the changes from target to source directly. It has to be always the source should get modified and then the target. So that is why it is like unidirectional data flow, and that's gonna make your like applications life very easier. So even if you want to add some kind of additional components, doesn't matter, because the same data is getting modified and then it would reflect everywhere. So that's all about the state. So I hope you are clear with these few concepts. So I hope things are useful to you by looking at this particular demos. Regarding creation of your web application, I said like I just have shown you the first page of that Facebook. When you just go and search for the React Native, this is how you can build your application. You don't need to go and install the React Native CLI. That would help to create the React Native application. Along with this, you need to have Android Studio available if you want to go for an Android emulator, or if you're going to go for a Mac and then iOS. So respective things are also being specified there. Now as I'm trying to show it on a Windows machine, that's why I'm going for a Android Studio, not for the iOS there. So there are a few more concepts we need to discuss. There are a few more demos I need to show, but we will go for that in a next module. So I hope you got a little bit idea about it. You feel it little familiar. Definitely you have to be clear with the prerequisites, then only things would be more easy. Fine. So let's see you guys in the next module. Thanks a lot. So by these three demos, we come to an end of the today's session. So before we completely end this particular session, let's summarize what all things we discussed today. So basically, first of all, we started with what exactly the React Native is all about. Why do we need to go for it? So it's nothing but it's just a kind of JavaScript framework given by Facebook to us, but not for creation of any web application, but for creation of a mobile native app. So the main intention to go for this is just by writing a JavaScript code, it is possible for you to create mobile native app, and that too not only for Android, but it is also going to be there for iOS, and tomorrow it would be there for some other platform as well. Then we discuss about what is the difference between native app and hybrid app. So just to try to put it in a simple words, hybrid app is something which is going to work in a web view, or which is going to works in a wrapper of the browser which is there on that particular device, whereas native app is actually getting installed on that particular device. Then we just talk about the difference between React or React.js as a library and React Native. So both are the things that are being introduced to the world by Facebook itself, but React.js is a library for creation of a UI components that would be used at the web level, whereas React Native is a kind of so-called successor of React which would be used to create native mobile apps. So whichever are the React components, you would be able to use it as it is in a React Native, just obviously with some kind of little change in that. Then after this we discuss about the kind of working which React Native does. So how exactly React Native works? So we discussed a little bit about React and the virtual DOM. So your React gonna create a component that's getting targeted, or that's getting rendered on a virtual DOM, and then further only the differences which are gonna occur in the virtual DOM, the older version and the latest version, only those changes are getting re-rendered on the actual DOM. So things are much faster. React Native also works exactly in the same way. Instead of virtual DOM, you're gonna have a kind of respective connector. So JavaScript code which is written in a React Native internally make use of a respective APIs from the platform specific code, and with the help of connector it would render that stuff on the actual native application. As well, along with this, few of the concepts we explore here, just creation of any of the React Native component. So we have seen one example of banana component where I am trying to show some kind of image. So I shown you that particular example there. Then we discuss about two very important concepts from React Native. One is a props and other is state. So props is something we discussed, like that is used to store some kind of information specific to that component. But props are immutable, you just can't modify that. Whereas you can make your component as a stateful component by having a state to it. Again, state is some other way by which you can store the information specific to that component. But the difference in props and state is mutable, you can modify that. So generally your container component, a parent component, which gonna render the different children component, gonna pass some data from it to the child by using state. Rather, state is there with the parent that is being passed to the child by using props. So state is a mutable component where you can modify that, and then that modified value also can be passed to the child by using props. So basically these three demos we have seen. I know like in today's session most of the part it was all about theoretical and only few demos we explore, but yes, that theoretical was also necessary, because before you do actual implementation of it you should understand the basic knowledge about it. So hope in next session we will be exploring more on the demos and the different concepts which are there as a part of React Native. So I hope you guys are curious about it. Thanks for the today's session.